Welcome back to Project Command. Today, we're honored to have with us Deputy Chief Kevin Henson. He's a longtime firefighter, fire service technologist, and passionate advocate for leveraging innovation to better protect firefighters and communities alike. Kevin began his fire service journey back in 2001 as a volunteer firefighter, later rising through the ranks from engineer to captain, then serving major roles including accreditation manager, special operations chief, and today, the Deputy Chief of St. John's Fire District. A graduate of Waldorf University with a bachelor's in fire administration and a participant in the Executive Fire Officer program at the National Fire Academy, Kevin brings both academic knowledge and real-world experience to the table. Beyond his day-to-day fire service leadership, Kevin is deeply involved at the state and national level, serving as a technology information specialist and communication specialist with the South Carolina Emergency Response Task Force, and playing a key role in advancing standards, compliance, GIS capabilities, and technology integration for fire and EMS agencies. Chief, thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks, Peter. Big fan of the show, so this is an honor for myself to be here. Super excited to be here and talk with you today. And again, thanks for allowing me to come on and share just a little bit of the knowledge and information that I've gained over the years.
Yeah, man, well, like we've both said, I've just been really excited for this conversation. I think we got some really cool things to cover. But before we get into all that, could you just kind of tell us a little bit about your journey in the fire service? How'd you get into it and how'd you get where you are?
Yeah, so absolutely, Peter. I grew up in a small town, so I'm a small town kid. Grew up in a small town called Lyman, South Carolina. A lot of people probably wondering where that is. So it's located in the upstate of South Carolina, kind of up near North Carolina, South Carolina border there.
Hmm.
But in high school, I was involved in sports and lots of other things. And to be honest with you, I really didn't know what I wanted to do, when I was a kid in high school. But got out of school, did a little stint trying to go to college at the technical school, and that didn't work out for me. I wasn't into it at the time. So honestly, kind of an odd thing. I got into utility work.
Nice.
Uh, so I worked for a water company for a little while, and then became a contractor for Duke Energy, which is a large energy um, company here in South Carolina. And so worked for them for a while. And honestly, around uh, October of 2011, coming right out of, I'm sorry, 2001, coming right out of 9/11. I was just really looking to do more, trying to find my way to serve, never was in the military, anything like that. And a friend of mine was a volunteer firefighter. And so he talked to me about that, went by the fire station, immediately fell in love with the guys and the camaraderie and, of course, the kitchen table, and started volunteering then in 2001. And pursued an opportunity to go full time a couple years later. Um, Worked through the ranks of firefighter all the way through battalion commander. Went to a larger municipality, did some time in the fire marshal's office, then did some time in planning. So you and I have a lot in common there. And then
Yeah.
accreditation, special operations. And then 2021, I kind of chased a dream to move to the coast with my family, and took the position at St. John's. And so I've really enjoyed my time there. But that's kind of a snapshot of my journey.
Man, what a journey it is too. And now down by the coast, that's clean living right there.
Yeah, I'm not going to complain. You know, every year we get this little thing called hurricane season, so everybody
Oh
kind of
yeah.
gets nervous. The wife and the kids and the family. And this past year, knock on wood, we want lots more of those.
Hmm.
No mainland strikes for the hurricane season in 2025. So we hope to repeat that. But yeah, love it. I love the people I work with, love the area we live. So it's been awesome.
Nice. Very cool. Excuse me. Well, that's a good segue. One of the things that I was very excited to talk to you about was just this last week, you attended the IAFC Technology Summit International, and we've spoke very briefly about it. And it sounds like there was some really good presentations. I actually really wish I could have gone, but yeah, I was hoping you could kind of give us the unofficial review, tell us some of the highlights, some of the best sort of standout sessions, or anything that you think we should know, or anything you want to share.
Oh man, how much time do we got?
Much as you want.
So my first time. Um, I honestly didn't know what to expect. You know, the IFC doesn't disappoint. I'm a big fan of FRI, and so going into it, I didn't know what to expect, but had high expectations because of what my experiences have been with IFC
Hmm.
and of course with Fire Rescue International in that conference, and it exceeded expectations.
Hmm.
Kevin Sofin, phenomenal guy. Like, have to give him credit for coordinating that, as well as the tech council and all the folks that serve on that. Just absolutely amazing. And for me, it was kind of bittersweet, I guess, because there's a lot of people in the room that I know, a lot of people much smarter than me. Uh, but the best way I can explain it is it was kind of a location for everybody that's involved in what I would consider to be cutting edge technology in the fire service, or even the fire service of tomorrow, in the same room with the same mission, sharing ideas, sharing experiences, talking shop, just what firefighters do. It was amazing to have Mike Cox from Esri there. Again, you hit it earlier. I'm a little bit of a GIS nerd, so Mike always brings a phenomenal amount of information to the table. I know you know Mike
Henrico
from where
Fire
you're at up
alumni.
there.
Oh yeah.
So having him, Joe Powers and everything that Joe did in Henrico, and of course in Charlottesville, and then now what he's doing with the IFC and the ESCI, just all those folks, as well as um, a host of people from um, you know you name it, right? Dr. Lori Moore Merrill and all the team, Rebecca Harn. Just I could go on and on with
Hmm.
names of people that are data scientists, data analysts, people at the cutting edge of what we're doing, and it was awesome. So key takeaways, man, for the firefighter in me and the operations guy that still loves special operations and that stuff, I was really blown away with a presentation by DC Fire and EMS. Of course, there's a tragic airline crash, as everyone remembers, back in January. The United Airlines, I'm sorry, American Airlines crashed with the Army Black Hawk there, and of course they went into the Potomac. And so there was a really good presentation by DC Fire and EMS on the response to that, but not only a response to that, how they leverage technology, specifically GIS and Esri technology, um, to catalog, different things. But really, it was a testament of the power of GIS and the power of those tools, and how they leverage that to really take what they defined as what could have been a multi-month mission, and narrow it down to just a couple of weeks. And so that was a highlight. I
What were
think some of
some,
the others. Go
if you don't
ahead. I'm
mind me
sorry.
asking, what were some of the things they were doing with GIS? If you can think of a couple examples.
Yeah. So for the folks out there that may be listening that are into to USAR, they may be familiar with a product called SARCOP. And so not they weren't using SARCOP, but if you're familiar with that, and that's the Search and Rescue Common Operating Picture, it's a dashboard, it's Survey 123, it's Quick Capture. There's lots of different tools that can drive information that are ingested into Esri that populate those dashboards. But what they did specifically um, was take Survey 123 and in real time, on the fly, create a survey that they could share with people both inside and outside their organization. And so, any IT folks out there that know how GIS tools sometimes can be driven by permissions, as well as some devices, IT has management rules that don't allow certain applications to be downloaded. And so, because of that, they went with Survey 123, which allowed them to share a link that could be used by anyone with any device. And they were able to catalog, locations of where it could be debris, it could be human remains, it could be, any host of things that were associated with the crash itself.
Hmm.
And so they were able to catalog those by location. And of course, as they built the survey out, you know, they had drop down menus where they could select, the type of item that was found, and
Hmm.
so on and so forth. But
Amazing.
it was really amazing. And for what it's worth, the guy that that kind of created this on the fly, their GIS guy there in the Marine Division, was actually on the West Coast. I found that interesting. He was
Hmm.
actually on the West Coast. He had been presenting about some Esri tools and GIS technology that they were using when the crash happened. And so it was a true testament of how, uh, from the West Coast of our country, that, you know, a technologist along with support from Esri and Mike Cox himself could create this on the fly and modify tools they had for people on the literal opposite end of the coast of our country on the East Coast to use it in real time. I mean, it was
Incredible.
just fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I really like about that is, technology is such a powerful force multiplier, but a lot of times what keeps us from fully leveraging it is exactly the stuff you were talking about, like a permissions issue, or you can't open it on this device or that device. And so, the strategy involved in putting out a preemptive quick fix, like, hey, this is going to get you around the permissions issues. Yeah, I love that. I mean, that is really strategic thinking for a pretty, I don't even know how you describe a plane crash, just a
Catastrophic, you know? Yeah.
catastrophic, multi-layer, multi-specialization call. So yeah, incredible, incredible. Sorry, I didn't mean to derail you there. I just kind of got pulled into the GIS wormhole there.
It was awesome. I'm with you.
I saw on LinkedIn it looked like a workshop where they were training people to um, they were teaching firefighters how to train a custom GPT, like an I don't know, an agent, and it kind of made me wonder. Like, I don't know if I see you laughing. Were you in that session? Is that that's
Yeah.
something I would have loved to do.
Yeah. So that was a two day session, and it's not full day, right? They
Hmm.
had breakouts. Um, yes, I participated in that
So
as
cool.
well as another member of our team from St. John's. And so, yeah, it was taught by Microsoft, which
Hmm.
is fantastic, right? It was specific to Copilot. And so, two Microsoft folks were in there, and then Chief Kraus from St. Lucie, Florida, who is well known in the world of using AI in the fire service. He was part of that program as well. And yeah, the first day was kind of giving you a little intro to Microsoft Copilot. Their reasoning, obviously, is a lot of agencies are using the 365 platform from Microsoft, and
Hmm.
so it can be implemented fairly easy, with the right permissions and licensing. So yeah, they kind of gave an overview, and then the second day they really dove into creating agents. So you spoke about GPTs. You can do the same thing in Chat GPT. I think for them, Copilot, the reason they were talking about that a lot is, enterprise security, and a lot of IT folks are going to look for things that can have a little bit more, uh, I guess, left and right boundaries that they can control.
Yeah.
And so it was fascinating. They they kind of went through how to create an agent from start to finish. Of course, as much as you can go over in about 90 minutes,
Hmm.
but it was really good. Took a lot of great information away from that.
Yeah.
Um, Real interactive class too, where we could follow along. So that was a fun one.
For the people listening that maybe aren't as familiar with AI, when you say an AI agent, what do you mean by that?
So I'm still learning. I learn every day, but um, in their world, in the Copilot world, they call it an agent. So imagine if you use Chat GPT, if you use Copilot, if you use Claude, any of those.
Hmm.
Generally, from what most of us know, you're interacting with that platform using a chat. So
Hmm.
you can ask it a question, you can seek information, you can use it as a browser search, whatever you're asking it, it gives feedback. With the agent, my understanding, and again, I'm no AI expert, but
Me neither.
the the agent can be dialed in and trained, if you will.
Hmm.
So an agent, you essentially kind of give it a description of what it is. All right, I'll give you a short example. Uh, it'll say you wanted to use one to help you review policy. So you could say you're a fire service expert, or you're a fire service executive, chief officer that is responsible for writing policy for your organization. I would like you to review documents and information that I put into the system or the chat using that lens being that of that executive chief officer, on and on and on. Tell it kind of what you want it to do. You could even tell it that you want it to return the feedback or the answers at a certain grade level. I want this written at a college grade level or a high school grade level, on and on. You can also provide it knowledge. And so in their example, that knowledge may be documents. So going back to the example of the policy, maybe your organization uses a template. And so the policy template is kind of outlined with purpose, scope, definitions, on and on. You could provide that template to the agent in the knowledge section, as well as maybe other sites that you wanted it to use for references. And so it was really fascinating. So essentially, you're giving it more clear direction and possibly more information that you could either strictly hold it within those boundaries and tell the agent not to seek information on the web. You could turn web search off. You could give it URLs where it can only search certain websites. I'd say the sky's the limit, but I guess the short answer that was the long answer to a short question, but to kind of summarize that, instead of having to type all that every time you do it, right? Because I do that a lot, when I was first getting into ChatGPT, is you're given a whole lot of directions and then you go, oh, here's that thing that I wanted you to look at. Instead of having to do that every time, the agent's trained, if you will. And so you drop a policy in there and you say, hey, compare against, help me, redefine whatever it is that you want it to do. And it's kind of already got rules and boundaries and directions pre-built. And that was probably a really horrible way of saying
I don't think so. I think it was actually great. It kind of it kind of made me think about kind of the way I look at building a prompt is you have the parameters and you have the prompt. And the parameters are kind of the context, like who you are, where you work, what grade level you want to write at, how long it should be, this many characters, this many pages, whatever. And then the prompt is what do you want it to do? And so it sounds like the agent, and correct me if I'm wrong here, it sounds like it saves the parameters and you can put in new prompts like now do this, now do this, now do this, but it saves the context or the parameters of the conversation or the dialogue.
Yeah, much more well said there. And
well, I was just cribbing off of yours. So, but yeah, that's man, that's so cool. I would have loved to be in that class. That's we did a leadership thing for our county. It was actually a really cool, presentation, and they had a lady, and I'm drawing a blank on her name. I feel guilty. She was great. I wish I could give her some credit. I'll put it in the show notes if I think about it. And she did a great presentation about how if you take ChatGPT, which was her preferred AI model, mine as well, and you go into and I can't remember it now, but you can create custom instructions for your standard AI agent. So you open up ChatGPT, and every single time you type in without putting any information in, it's doing exactly what you just described. It saves your parameters. And you can save in there things like every response you give me should move me closer towards my, career and personal goals. Every response should be well researched and, whatever. So it's just you can put in things that, or no M dashes. That's a big one. People don't like the M dashes, but yeah, very interesting. Yeah. I was going to ask you about AI at the end here, but I mean, we kind of just, it seems like a good segue from the technology conference. One of the things that I'm the most interested in about AI is exactly what you're describing, where we have, you have a bunch of different things day to day that a fire officer could be tasked with doing. And some of them 100% a human being needs to do, like decision making, going to talk to the guys at the firehouse after a bad call, on and on. And then there's things that are important, but they don't necessarily need to be done by a human. And that's things like, writing lengthy report, obviously you need to give it information, but lengthy report writing or, question and answer help, troubleshooting. And the more we can get AI to do the latter, the stuff that doesn't require a human, the more it clears us up to do the things that 100% does require a human: strategy, policy development, face-to-face human interactions. And I wonder what you think about that.
No, you're dead on. Sorry, I took a drink of water there.
You're good. You're good.
Going into this technology conference, AI was kind of at the forefront of my mind. Just so happens that was probably the most talked about technology while we were there because it is so popular and it's so integrated, or it is being integrated in things that we do. So
Hmm.
you're exactly right. I guess I look at AI and technology in general as a supplement to what our people in the street do, what our
Yeah.
admin folks do. So it supplements that. There's always a time where technology is going to fail. There's always a time to where it may not produce the results you need. So I would always encourage people to never 100% rely on it. But you're exactly right that time is finite. That is the one thing that we could argue that is finite. There's not unlimited time in the world, and so when people are strapped for time, whether it be admin, a fire officer in the street, whomever, a paramedic, anything that we can take and allow AI to do and do it well, and even if it's to assist that person, I 100% think that's something that we need to lean into. And examples of that would be there was a vendor there, and I'm happy to go into who that was if you'd like. But for now, I'll say there was a vendor there that was speaking about AI, and they have an RMS system. And one of the things that they're doing that was really interesting is we all have smartphones, right? Most of us, if not all of us, are carrying smartphones. And so when it comes to a narrative, that's probably the one of the most lengthy pieces of the reports that we do, whether it be an EPCR on the medical side or a fire report in the soon to be NARIS reporting system. But you could speak. And so while that's not AI, it was, speak to text, but then the AI within the system would give you options to kind of clean it up and make it, however you want it to be. No different than when you ask ChatGPT to rephrase something or
Yeah.
reword something with your prompt. So that was just one example, but something that was said multiple times throughout this conference that one, it inspired me, and two, made me feel like the IAFC and the folks putting on this conference get it, is we, and by we I mean the attendees, were told multiple times, encouraged multiple times, that the use of AI is going to create more time.
Hmm.
You're going to create more time, or not create, you're going to free up more time for yourself and your team with the proper use of AI. It's not, it could happen, it will happen.
Yeah.
The feedback from that and the follow up to that was, when it does give you more time back, do not fill that up with additional work. Take that time, spend with your crews, use it in a leadership role, use that to coach, mentor, um, go sit down with the folks, spend it with your family, spend it with your friends, get some downtime. They encouraged us not to take that space that we've created and fill right back up with more work. And I found that very inspiring, because that's what we do, right? We find something that helps us do a job. It makes the time that we spend on that job shorter. So now what do we do in that space and void we just created? We fill it with more work. It's just what we do.
Hmm.
And so that was awesome. And I wanted to mention that on the podcast here, because I think a lot of people need to hear that. It's going to make your life better. It's going to assist you. Don't be afraid of it. But also, the challenge is, don't fill that time with more work. Make sure you're finding that balance so that you're still spending it with people that matter.
Wow. I mean, honestly, amen. I don't have anything to add to that. That is 100% perfectly articulated. Yeah, man, I have a couple things, directions I want to go with that. But one of the things I thought was, first of all, let me just say this before I forget. I think that is so wise because, we just have a tendency in the fire service, especially in fire service administration. We're uncomfortable with free time because, at least for myself, when I first got into an administrative position, I think there's a period of time that people will give you 3, 4 months or whatever, where there's not a lot of work coming in. And this is the time to set up your systems, learn how to use Outlook, learn who handles things with legal and risk management, learn who, how your boss wants things done, and how to set up calendar invites and all that sort of stuff. But the temptation is you get up there and you don't have much going on for those few months, and so you just fill up your plate with as many little side projects as you can, or you offer to help people. And then the work starts coming in at that 3 or 4 month mark. Now you're completely inundated. So yeah, I think that's a really wise thing to leave people with on that subject is, you want to shoot for that 75% bandwidth and leave 25% free for things that come in, or for the inevitable, the work you thought was going to take 1 week now takes two or whatever. So
Yep.
I just think that's great. One final thing I wanted to say on that was I think that the AI revolution is so interesting because most of the time, and this is something you and I talked about the other day, most of the time organizations that innovate, that innovation comes from the top down. Like a CEO or a chief will say, hey, I want to use this thing. This is going to make our work more efficient, et cetera, et cetera. And they'll push it down on their workforce. But what's so interesting about AI, and something that you mentioned, was that innovation is happening from the ground up because, let's just say someone says, hey, here's 40 hours worth of work that you need to do this week. But with AI, you can do it in 20 hours or 15 hours. Now you just got 20 hours of your life back that you can spend, with the people that you work with, or, whatever. And so it's interesting that people are discovering that through AI, they can claw back some of their time, either at work or at home. And they're finding a lot of creative ways to use it. So I think that's a really insightful point.
Yeah, I appreciated their leadership sharing that for sure.
Well, that's a good transition here into something else I wanted to talk to you about. And so, of course, and everyone listening knows, I like to focus a lot on project management on this podcast. And I was really curious to, and again, we had just a phenomenal conversation last week, and so, or I guess it was earlier this week. But in any case, to build on that, you've been a part of a lot of different sections of the fire service, and you've managed lots of different kinds of projects in all of the different roles that you've been in. So I just wonder, do you have any insights or projects that you could share with us, or things that you've learned along the way that you think might be beneficial for people maybe coming into an administrative role, or maybe that have been there for a while but haven't had as much experience managing projects?
Yeah, and Peter, you're absolutely right. The conversation that we had initially when we first talked on the phone, again last week or earlier this week, I can't even remember when it was. Everything runs together. It was great. It was phenomenal. And I think first, to your point, yes, I have been part of a lot of projects. I've been lead on a lot of projects. Some, really, really large that were cross-functional or multiple departments. Some very small. I will say first, I think I shared this with you the other day. The fire service, if I can kind of lead into it, the fire service, we historically, in my opinion, do a terrible job with project management. I have had some projects that were managed really, really well, and I've had some projects that weren't. I've had projects that failed, and so the one thing that I'll say is, don't be afraid to fail, because I've learned so much out of the failures that I've had. I don't think there's been one failure where I didn't learn something. I'd be remiss to say that I didn't have a lot of failures. So when it comes to project management, that's kind of what turned me on to your podcast. And so I heard about it from a colleague that's down in the Hilton Head area, so another coastal community here in South Carolina, and he shared it on LinkedIn. And my fire chief actually mentioned it. He said, "Hey, I think this is kind of right up your alley.
Love it.
Maybe
I'm honestly so honored by that.
Yeah." And I said, "Okay." So I kind of dug into it and listened to first couple episodes, and man, it drew me in. And so since then, I've learned a ton. I learned so much from our conversation the other day that for those listening, like, I've actually reached out to Peter, aside from us talking about this conversation that we're having right now, and said, "Hey, do you mind sharing, some of the documentation that you have from project management? Because I'm not formally trained in project management. No different than probably most of you out there listening. The training that I have in project management was either the school of hard knocks, which you kind of talked about earlier, where you try and you fail, or it was, what limited exposure you get to it. Um, as a company officer or even a firefighter that's been handed something and said, do this. And,
Hmm.
and you try it, doesn't work, or maybe it does. And then if it doesn't, you go with plan B. And there's really no clean framework to it. Uh, and so with that, I've been fascinated with what you've been sharing, and actually have a project that we're getting ready to start right now that I'm trying to formalize more using some of the tools that you talk about and some of the framework that you talk about. But ultimately, I think you said the other day we had a conversation about ICS, and there was a comparison between project management and ICS, and I think you brought that up on the phone, and that was a really good analogy because ICS is scalable. We can, and I'm an IMT nerd too, so I get into that stuff. But ICS can be done on the smallest event where it's you and your company, and you're establishing command, and you're filling those roles, and you're given those tasks. And it can be scaled all the way up to hurricane response, the airline crash that we talked about earlier in DC, all those things. And so, really, project management's no different, right? Project management can be scaled from one or two people working on something, or you're kind of organizing the framework for a project for yourself, or you're organizing the framework for that project for a team.
Yep, that's exactly right. Excuse me. And actually, I think that's a pretty good segue into something else I wanted to ask you, mainly because I'm not, and obviously I have the basics on ICS, and on our fire chief is a big ICS advocate, and so for that reason, it's pretty prolific in our department. But I'm certainly no expert, and certainly not an expert like you are. And so I was just curious if you could kind of talk to us, what does ICS tell us about how to manage work? I mean, I know obviously it's incident focused, and one quick thing I'll say there is one of the interesting things I've noticed through the course of my project management journey is that because ICS is, it's one of the first things you learn in the academy, every firefighter knows it. We feel very confident and comfortable with it, which is great because ICS is really, really good for incidents. But when we try to take ICS and use it on projects, what happens is we turn projects into incidents, which it's not ideal because they're not the same. And so I was just wondering, what does ICS say about how to manage and organize work?
Great point. And so I would say to start with, um, if you consider an incident like a project, like if you replace the word incident with project, then I think everything that I'm about to share hopefully will make sense. So if you
Okay.
refer to an incident like a project, it has, or it should have, a defined objective, and that's probably on the incident side of things, right? That's going to be whatever it is you're trying to mitigate. You're trying to stop the leak. You're trying to suppress the fire. You're trying to extricate the victim from the car. You're trying to remove the person from the floodwater, whatever it is. So with the project, same thing. You're defining something that needs to be done. Example, um, we'll talk RMS because it's one that's near and dear to me right now. That is something that we're evaluating. So the project slash incident, however you want to look at it here, would be uh, we would like we'd like to identify different software platforms that are not interconnected, and identify if there is an opportunity to move to one singular platform with a single sign in that can meet or exceed all of the needs of these various platforms that are in use today.
Hmm.
So that would be your incident, right? That's your project. They both have a start and end, right? So your incident, it starts when the incident happens, the caller calls 911, whatever the case may be, and it ends when the situation's mitigated or controlled. Project, same way. You and I talked the other day. The project begins when you're handed something, or you're asked to solve a problem, or find a solution, or it could be more specific. It could be, hey, we need to build a fire station,
Hmm.
and then there's an end to it, right? So it's project ends, and the project ends when you've met all of the objectives that you and the project team established. So the RMS discussion I just had. All right. So, yes, we've identified that there is an opportunity to take multiple platforms and potentially merge them into one. The project would end when that platform is fully operational. Everyone's been trained. There's policy, there's guidance, there's all the administrative things are checked and ready. The invoice has been paid. Everybody has a login and a password, and they're ready to go. Right. So that would be the end. Something you really opened my eyes to was the fact that I think you said it roughly 90%. Like a lot of projects get to 90%, and that's kind of where they stop. And I loved the the latest article that you put out where you were talking about that technical debt, because I
Mm-hmm.
know we talked about that on the phone, and you really explained that well in your article. And that's exactly right. So again, uh, the fire or the incident is not going to end until the fire's completely there. You're not going to leave and it's still on fire, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then I wonder, switching from the ICS discussion back to project management, why is it that we do leave some of these things at 90%? Because if you
Yeah.
compare that to an incident, we're not going to leave an incident 90% mitigated.
Nope.
We're not, we're not going to walk away when we've got 9 out of 10 people out of the floodwater, and that last 10%. Well, we'll get to it when we can, but
Mm-hmm.
literally that's what we do in the fire service with projects. You brought that up, and I can think of a handful that I have to own that are at 90% or less that didn't quite get all the way to the finish line. And I think as leaders, one, we have to be open and honest enough to admit that. And I would challenge any of you out there to look at anything. It could be a small or large project, and I guarantee you'll find one that's not at 100%. And it's not because we're incapable of getting there. It's because of all the other things that are going on. And when you get to the point where you're like, all right, it's an operation, it's working, it's good enough. I
Yeah.
think good enough is probably the word that we
Yes.
use a lot. And we go, hey, we'll get that last piece when we get it. But then something else comes along that's more important or has a higher priority and things like that. And so, thanks to you, one of the things, and in your technical debt article, one of the things that I'm currently working on for myself is kind of cataloging those and saying, hey, here's some things where we're almost across the finish line. Let's take these, let's reduce that technical debt. And you're right, it just kind of gets that looming feeling, over your shoulder, kind of out of the back of your mind, or crosses out one more thing on your to-do list. Or if anything, it probably brings clarity and understanding to the people that we serve and support, like our people on the line out there, which is what my job is, to support them. It really brings clarity and closure to them, because that 10% might be something that really closes the gap between what they think they should be doing and what they should actually be doing. So,
Yeah. I mean, I, perfectly said. Perfectly said. The thing about technical debt is it's so insidious. And, when I went through the PMP school, which is Project Management Professional School, there's a whole section on technical debt, but that they never it was just like, oh, here's another thing you got to know about, and here's an Ishiguro diagram, and here's technical debt, and you kind of move on. And so I didn't really think that much about it, but I first noticed it in my organization, in my section. I started to notice a decrease in how much work I was getting done. And I was like, man, I used to be clearing a project a month, and I'm, getting slower and slower and slower. And I was trying to figure out why, like, where is my time going? And that's when the concept of technical debt, I was like, oh, yeah, I wonder if that's what's going on here. And so I started researching it, and I started talking to some different people in the fire service, yourself included, just asking, hey, is this something you're seeing as well? And 100% of the people I talked to about it are saying, yeah, absolutely. And so just if you're out there listening and you didn't get a chance to read the article or listen to the podcast I did about it, basically, to kind of add on to what you very eloquently articulated, is you have these projects and we get them to 90% done. Let's just say we're putting new 12 lead monitors out in the field. The 12 lead monitors are in the field, the charging cables are in the field, they work. You could use them for a cardiac arrest, you could use them for whatever. But we didn't put out a Target Solutions training video. We forgot to update our policy. which included how to take care of them, and maybe we forgot, some communication. And so, because we didn't do those few last things, the sort of integration work we could call it, now someone's going to break it because they didn't know how to take care of it. Now you're going to get in, two or three emails. Hey, where's the charger supposed to go in the fire station or whatever? And you get all these like little small, piddly little things that come out of it. But then you stack on top of each other because you don't just have one project going on; you have a bunch. So now you have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 projects that are pretty close to done, but there's those few little things. And so you just get this ever growing cascade of work coming in. And so instead of moving on like you should do when a project is done, you try to move on, you try to go to a new project, but you get all these emails and issues that keep popping up. And the more you stack that debt on top of each other, the more drag it creates, and then it decreases your velocity. So, and it always seems like it's the same three things. It's communication, training, and policy development. And those are the three things we forget to do. And yeah, it's incredible how many people I've talked to. And we have someone coming on the show in January, a chief in New York who I was just talking to. He's like, absolutely, this is probably the single biggest thing we've got going on in our administrative section. So yeah, it's just appreciate you bringing that up, and I do hope people will listen to the podcast. But yeah, it's something that I noticed first in our organization, and just after talking to people, it's like, yeah, this is I think this is a big thing. But the last thing I wanted to talk to you about, and I really do appreciate you've been really gracious with your time, so I do appreciate it. But the last thing I wanted to get to is what you're a big technology advocate in the fire service, and I know that you're doing a lot of very cool, innovative things with technology to use it as a force multiplier. What are a couple pieces of technology that people might not know about, but if they could implement them in their organization, it would make their life easier?
We'll start with Planner because I think for a lot of folks, if you're in an enterprise environment with, Microsoft Office or 365, you probably have access to Microsoft Planner. And I'll speak to Planner and Teams kind of as one. So in Teams, you can do lots of cool things, right? So you can communicate via post, via chat with groups or individuals, however you want to do it. You can upload files. You can create individual literal teams. You can create channels within the teams, on and on. I don't want to. I don't want to go too far because I feel like a lot of people are using it, probably understand it. But within Teams, you can kind of bring everything about that project into one and kind of make it a singular place that everybody can come to work on that. So it kind of cleans it up a little bit where you're not looking for things in like 50 places. But with Planner kind of integrated into Teams, you can do lots of cool things. You can assign tasks. You can provide updates. You can create individual checklists within that task. The possibilities are endless. One of our team members, she's super fantastic. She actually was with me and one of our other teammates at the TSI conference in Texas this past week. But on the accreditation side of what we're doing in our department, she built out in Planner kind of a project for job descriptions. And so I guess you could call me the project manager, and she would be like the project coordinator, if you will, although she did tons more work on this. And so she built out the job descriptions within the planner to where, there was uh, a essentially a task for each job description, right? Firefighter, engineer. We have what we call senior positions, which are in some organizations acting or like write up roles. So, all of our operational positions were put in there.
Hmm.
And the objective was to go through, we were going to review the job descriptions because we're moving to an annual review. We were going to review the job descriptions, make sure that everything was up to date and it matched what they're actually doing in the field and what we're asking of them to do. Make sure all the education training requirements match. And then our next goal was to take that and provide it to our human resources
Hmm.
office to where they would give it the final review and check off, right? So historically, that would be what? I type one up, I email it to you, you make your notes, you email it back. Well, we've got smarter than that over the years, and we've, implemented like SharePoint. And so with SharePoint, you could at least share a link, and then we can all see the document in real time, or a live document where we can see our edits. So that was better. Well, then we got Teams and say, okay, we have Teams. Well, now we have a file upload area, so we put them in there, and that's even better. Well, then we find planner. And within planner, it takes it that step further to where all of those things that I just talked about can still be done. It still provides a link to where you can get to the file in SharePoint and everybody can edit and see the changes. But it then adds the ability to create those tasks where it could say, okay, there might be a specific team member that I need to focus on just the requirements for the position when it comes to training and education, right? Like maybe that lives in what we call our professional standards and training office. So they may need to focus. So you can give a task and assign it to them. Well, then maybe someone else has been tasked with the essential job functions and making sure those are well. And so in Planner, all of that can be really nicely done. It can be done in a way where everybody can track it. You can keep up with timelines. You can assign it due dates and all those things. So if you haven't used Planner or you haven't explored it, I highly encourage you to do it. We're actually planning to do our self-assessment. So the self-assessment part of our accreditation is being built out there kind of as we speak. She's been working on that very diligently. And I think it's going to be just another example of what I told you, where it can be put in one place, it's trackable, it is easily accessible, and we can really hold people accountable to the due dates and who's got the assignments. And, it's all in one place. Super exciting if you haven't used it. So
Amazing.
that is Planner in a nutshell.
And let me just say really quick that this just proves out my thesis. And again, another thing we talked about. I am so convinced that all fire departments are running the exact same projects. That job descriptions project that you just stated, that's actually a project that I have, and I'll be honest, I'm totally stuck on. Maybe I'll get with you after this and see if I can pick your brain a little bit more. That's so interesting to hear that you're working on that. Anyway, sorry, I derailed you. You were
No, you're good. That was it. That was it. That was Planner. I can't remember if you
Yeah, they
what the original question was. So
yeah,
if
we were
there's
just
more
talking
to
about,
it.
the force multiplier stuff, and Planner's a great one. God, I just, and you said something to me the other day that I thought was totally spot on, which is, and I'll butcher it, I don't remember the exact quote, but basically that, the technology is only as good as the rollout or something like that. And if we don't train our people when we give them this new technology, we're only going to get about 20% of the leverage or 50% of the value out of it. And I just think that's so true. I've seen that, departments will push out Planner, which is a great tool, but they won't train their workforce on it, and then you have some people that'll self-teach on YouTube and some people that are maybe a little bit more IT savvy than others, and they'll pick it up. But by and large, you'll have a great tool that you're paying for, and then you're not getting nearly as much leverage out of as you can. I thought that was a really good point that you brought up.
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. We're guilty of that. I'm guilty of that. So even the example I just gave you, we take it for granted because the two of us that were kind of heading up the project, if you will, had conversations about how we had used Teams in the past and how much we liked it. So very, very familiar, I guess you
Hmm.
could say. And there's other members of the team that weren't. And so, going back to, you got to be honest with yourself. That's an area where, as we move into using this more, we do need to do a little bit more training, because sure, it's pretty intuitive. And if you know how to poke around a computer, you can figure it out. But again, why I love talking to you and other people about this stuff is you identify things where even in your own organization, you're kind of falling short. And that's one that I'll own for us is we have great tools and we're, again, about 90% good with them. It's that last 10% of getting those people trained and familiar and at least comfortable to where they can go in there and use those tools and everybody gets to benefit from it.
Yeah, it's always that last 10%. Chief Henson, thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, thanks, Peter.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Project Command. If you have a question or a topic you'd like us to cover, send us an email at projectcommandpodcast@gmail.com. That's projectcommandpodcast@gmail.com. We'll do our best to answer it either directly or on air in a future episode. This has been Project Command, bringing command level thinking to every project in the fire service.